Hello and welcome to simonsez artwork. In this video I'm going to be doing a self-portrait using this fountain pen. It's a Waterman's fountain pen. I really liked it. I wanted to try it out and see what it worked like for a self-portrait using a bit of hatching and a bit of luck to try and get the proportions right. It wasn't perfect, but it was quite interesting. So, all right, let's get started. For this drawing, I start off by going for the darker areas, and I mention this quite often in my videos. Let me quickly say I do apologise for the in and out of focus of the camera. Hopefully with it being a time lapse it will not be too distracting. Plus it does stop after a while. It's just at the beginning. I think it's something to do with the light, because this was quite a while ago, and you can tell by the length of my hair. My hair in this video is when it was, I think it was just past my ears, and I'm considering cutting my hair to about that length again, because it was much nicer than what it is at the moment where it's way past my shoulders. But I don't know, I'm of two minds at the moment. So anyway, what I usually mention in my videos is how when you're drawing an ink first sketch, to try to concentrate on areas that are very dark, and to make sure that wherever you're going to make your first few marks are places where there's enough dark patches. And you can see from the photo reference in the top left that there's enough dark patches around the hair to really get your bearings and figure out where you can start to add the darker areas. And the approach then is just to look at the shapes and the relationships between one thing and another. And if you don't know what that means, then what I do is that I will draw a mark, a sort of a shape almost, where I think, okay, this is similar to this. It's not going to be, completely correct. It's going to be close enough. But the point being is that once you've made that mark, you can then look for the horizontal line, which is the flat one, like going from left to right, and the vertical line, which is from the top to the bottom. And both of those lines, when you've drawn something, if you check horizontally what lines up with this, what is around the same point as this, and then vertically the same thing, what is pretty much aligned with it, and then you basically start to draw those things in. Now what I'm doing here is something that's very difficult, and I say that you may try this and find it quite easy, but I think it's quite a difficult thing to do, and it's trying to draw the hands that are overlapped and folded into each other. And because they're all folded in as they are, that just means that you've got to try and draw the shapes in between. And I've left the hands at that point where they're literally just shapes. And I found it really interesting to draw something that's that large, because it shows foreshortening, which is basically my hands are nowhere near that big compared to my head, but because of how the photograph is taken, my hands were massive compared to the size of my head. And foreshortening is basically the concept of showing how things shrink as they get further away and become enlarged as they become closer to where you are. And it's something which I really enjoy in life drawing sessions, and in any kind of drawing that I do, I really like to draw foreshortening. It's something which I really appreciate. I think it's because things become very abstract. So for life drawing, what I remember is a lot of the time it would be someone's leg would be, I'd be around the feet area. I mean, it's not where I'd be, but I'd say I'd be at that end of the body, and the person would be either lay down or sat in a kind of half lay position. And because their feet would be closest to me, their leg then becomes this shape, which is, it's not long like a leg is. It's not elongated and drawn from top to bottom. It's more bulged in certain areas, because when you're lay down, all of the muscles and everything gets squashed by either the surface that it's lay on, or the floor, or the other leg. And that's what I quite liked, is that I would then do these horizontal and vertical measurements based on where those things would be kind of bulged out, and kind of making this mass, this kind of shape, this area, this space it's taken up. Now I'm going back into the hands again here, being quite careful about where I draw stuff, and as much as I draw a little mark and then I go back into doing the hair and the beard, but I know that I have to finish off the hands at some point, but I'm putting it off because it is the most difficult thing. So I think I'm trying to make my mind up about how much of the hands I'd like to draw. And this is one of those drawings where if I would have left them unfinished, it would have probably looked better, but I still quite like how I finish it off. I do maybe a little bit too much, but you've got to do these things in order to find out. And then I wouldn't say I regret it. I certainly think that it's something which I've learnt is not necessary afterwards, where if I were to do this type of drawing again, I'd do a completely different finish on the hands with this knowledge that I've earned. And that's why it's worth making mistakes, because it's not the worst mistake in the world. It's not, something where it's ruined. It's just different than I would do it in the future. And this idea for hatching the jacket I thought would be quite nice, because I just need it to be dark but not black. And the reason why I don't want it black is because, as you can see, I'm trying to do the inside of the cuffs black. And if everything were black, then you wouldn't be able to see the form quite so well. And I quite like what hatching does to a drawing, even if it's messy, scribbly hatching like what I'm doing. I think it's just it's an aesthetic, it's a certain style and a look. Now, this pose which I'm doing is part of a project that I did. It's a performance art piece that I did. It's the only performance art piece I think that I did for university, and it's because the art school that I went to really pressured students to do things like that as opposed to drawing or painting. So me doing this drawing was my way of being myself at the time where I was being pressured to be someone else. It wasn't a good school, it wasn't a good experience, and I talk about that in my old podcast, Studio Buddies, and if you have a look at those episodes, you'll see several of them are titled things which would suggest that I'm discussing some of the issues of university with a co-host. And in the future I'm going to do a bit more of a detailed storytelling or explanation of what happened there, because it's really bad and people should know, because I went to university with the best of intentions, as you can imagine. I just wanted to gain knowledge, I wanted to be an asset to the school, I wanted to learn art history and all different types of painting and drawing techniques. And none of that happened. I learned a couple of painting techniques because there was one tutor who was a painter, and he was the only one who wasn't involved in inappropriate behaviours, really. Everyone else was quite inappropriate there and really unprofessional, and I think did things which would be considered illegal, like really crossed the line. But anyway, I digress. That's what this drawing reminds me of, because I was steeped in the drama and the kind of depression of the reality of what I was facing there. And it was the pandemic, so it was all very difficult. I say it was the pandemic, it was, the start of the pandemic. So, here we are. I am now going to the wrist area, which I don't have a watch and I don't have any kind of hairband or anything like that, but I am trying to indicate that there are certain different areas where my hand is folded around or bent around to go around my knee, where it's clasping my other hand, and that means that there's going to be shadow in certain areas that aren't on others, because usually the whole distribution of light theory only suggests that the most direct impact of the light source will touch the highest and most aligned surface with that source of light, and everything that's slightly turned away will get a little bit less light, and anything that's a bit lower will get a little bit less light. So if it's lower and facing the light, then it'll have strong light, but not as strong as anything that's facing it higher up. It's just basically that, really. It's kind of common sense, but it's, you do have to think about it when you're drawing or painting. But it may seem really obvious. It's just, I don't know. I see a lot of paintings and drawings where people don't understand light, and I really want to help them understand that, but it's difficult to impart knowledge like that because people don't really want to be taught. A lot of the time people just think, well, I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I don't want to, try to force my way in there. So now, on this part of the drawing, I've put down the fountain pen, and what I'm going to bring out is something which I don't use very often, but it makes a hell of a difference when I do, and that's a nice marker pen, which will have this deep black, which I can then use instead of wasting all of my ink in the Waterman's fountain pen. I can just use this marker, and if I'm careful, I can have these precise little cut-out shape designs that I have for the shadow underneath the chair, and I quite like shape design like that. I like the little jagged areas and some nice little cuts and jagged, dagger-looking shapes here and there. I think it really adds to the drawing. So that's the two pens that I've used, and I'm not quite finished yet. I think I'm just looking at it and weighing up what do I think it needs. Now there's loads more in the photo reference, but you don't have to include loads more. It's just what is important to you. What do you want to include? For example, all of that darkness behind my jacket, I don't really want to include that because it's not the subject. The subject should be the focal point, which is the model in this case. And if I wanted to do a different type of drawing, then I would have included the darkness of the jacket. I probably would have, not of the jacket, sorry, of the materials on the chair behind the jacket. But I would have made it lighter than it is in the reference because I really would like the model to stand off. So it is a conscious choice that I would make. You don't have to make the same choice. I'm just saying that's the reason why I would, is that I want the focal point to stand off from the background. And in this I leave out most of the background because I think that the chair and the lean of the, of me leaning back in the chair, which is indicated by the legs, is enough. And this part of the drawing the hand is just a negotiation between where the shadow is and being careful to where I apply the hatching to indicate different areas of shadow and different planes of the hand. And planes just means surfaces, so anything that bends or twists will have different surfaces and different faces. So that is what is meant by planes. And if you consider that a box has 6 planes, all 4 sides and then the top and the bottom, those will all have different levels of light and shadow on them. When you have a light on, you'll see that one of them will be brighter than the others. Now on the hand here, I'm trying to add a bit of hatching but not make it too dark, and trying to have the effect to show that some parts of the hand are more illuminated than others. And I quite like, you see how lower on the hand there in between the fingers and the knuckles there's a little bit of light. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what I quite like about it, is that you find out that if you just follow the reference, you can see how you can learn parts about the anatomy of the hands and the fingers. A nice part of doing hatching is when you hatch back over the top, and that's what I'm doing here. The reason why I think that's nice is that hatching's really cool as an effect, but when you hatch back over hatching over certain parts of it, it means that the whole thing has a new level of depth to it, because you're saying this is darker again, and then that dark area is lighter then because you've darkened a certain area. It's just a way of showing an appreciation for depth and light and shadow. It's just, to me, it's really quite important. I think I was wearing a bracelet back then. I think I had something which was a friendship bracelet which said simonsez artwork on it. That's since broken, sadly. I've kept all the beads, but I don't know how to make things like that. It was a gift at the time. But yeah, that's where I got up to on the drawing, and that's how it worked out. Okay, so that's the video done. Now, I thought that certain parts of that were quite nice and quite interesting. I really liked how large the crossed hands were on my knee. And that was for a performance video which I did in the second year of university. And basically, I sat still for 3 minutes without blinking or moving a muscle. And if you want to see that I will leave a link here. So check out that video if you're interested. But I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell. If you can, share this channel with your friends or family or anyone who might enjoy the art videos and some of the podcasts that I do as well, because I've had some really interesting guests. So if you can share it around, I really would like to grow the channel if possible. And after all that, I will see you in the next video.